just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up.
Hey, we are live, coming to you live, answering all your heating and air questions. If I don't know the answer to the question, then we sometimes have some other pros in here, and we should be able to get you an answer to almost any question that you have. I know that's a tall order. I don't know everything. And one thing I am excited to talk about tonight is I have had a lot of comments. I did a video called The Biggest Mistake That Mini Split or Ductless Owners Make. And the video, essentially, I talk about how a lot of homeowners will cripple the system and the capabilities of the system by by adjusting the fan mode. And so instead of leaving it in auto, they'll adjust that fan mode. And so anyway, what we're going to talk about later in the show, why that actually hurts the ability of the system to remove humidity from the space. And a lot of folks, especially when it's oversized for the area that it's in, will have mold issues. They'll have mildew. They'll have humidity problems. And we're going to talk about why that is, because there is a lot of people very confused on why that is, and we're gonna talk about that later in the show tonight, because I've actually had people comment, other pros, other professionals saying, "Oh, I've been in the trade for 25 years." That's one of the comments I got the other day on that video. "I've been in the trade for 25 years, and you're wrong." I am not wrong on this. I mean, there's no argument. There's me. I don't know everything, but in this particular situation, this is, if you don't understand that, then I'm teaching you something. There's no arguing about it. Okay. So if you're a pro and that's your stance, you are wrong. I'm not wrong. And I'm teaching you. As arrogant as that sounds, that's how I feel about that particular situation. So we're going to talk about that later in the show. And clear all of that up. I'm going to make it hopefully clear so that way folks can understand why that is a big problem for mini splits and the operation of that mini split. But anyway, if you have any other heating and air questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. It looks like we've got some of you guys that have joined us before. Good to see you guys, Gary, Mark, and Ryan, all of you guys joining us, saying hello in the chat. If you want to also say hello, let me know that you're here. I'd love that. It's hard for me to jump back and forth from, because I stream to Facebook and to YouTube, and it's hard for me to see who's here unless you tell me you're here, if that makes sense. So it's not like I can see everyone that's in the chat because of the software I use unless you say hello. So another one of our regulars, Emery, good to see you. Anyway, tonight, later in the show, I'm going to go over why that problem with mini splits. I even commented on someone earlier and said, I'm going to talk about that in tonight's live show. So hopefully that person joins us tonight. And I'm going to talk about why mini splits have humidity issues if you don't leave it on auto. And we're going to talk about that. So Ryan says, I think it's Lennox or Trane, the HVAC company you won't work with. Nope. Incorrect. I'm not, as you guys know, I don't sell either one of those brands, but that's not the brand that, I love that you guys keep trying to guess. It's not Lennox, Trane, or Carrier. I'll tell you that. So anyway, so I wanted to start tonight's show out with a story out of this. Looks like this is from Jacksonville, Florida. And I thought this was an interesting story, because it's unfortunately not uncommon. And so it says the owner of Pet Rescue North in Jacksonville is out of thousands of dollars for a new HVAC her contractor never installed. Sorry, that was just worded different than how I would have worded it, I guess. Peggy Haynes said she has been running the shelter for more than 30 years and has cared for thousands of dogs and cats. Quote, this is where the unit was supposed to go. So I guess, she's probably, when they wrote this, was pointing at something. She said, affordable and reliable mechanic incorporated. Now, before these guys try to come after me, I'm just reading a news story. I'm not saying that they did this. I'm not alleging anything. I'm just reading a news story. But she said that affordable and reliable mechanic incorporated was supposed to install a new air conditioning and heating unit in one of her kennels. She said she paid the contractor Richard Parnell $4,525. She said, quote, people said I shouldn't have given him the money first. I trusted the man for after 20 some years. And we're going to maybe touch on that in just a second. Cause, if she paid it in full, then I would agree with them. But, there are companies, including mine, that ask for deposits on certain things. And so, I don't know if she's out the deposit or if she's out the full amount. It's not clear, which that is. But it says Haynes filed a police report, and this is where I think it gets interesting and why I wanted to do it. I wanted to go over this. Haynes filed a police report with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. She also wrote and sent a certified demand letter to Parnell per Florida statute 489-126, which states that a contractor has to apply for permits necessary to do the work within 30 days and start the work within 90 days because Parnell received more than 10% of the money up front. Got it. So he did receive at least more than 10%. Action News Jack's law and safety expert Dale Carson said under the statute, it becomes a criminal matter. There we go. So that's what I wanted to talk about. There's no requirement to give any money in advance. His advice is to make sure to use a credit card so you can dispute any charges. And the Better Business Bureau told us in 2022 that they received 71,897 complaints against construction-related businesses. 743 of them were in Northeast Florida. If he never gives me back the money, Haynes said, I would love to see him in jail. Action News Jax's Ben Becker asked the state attorney's office if and when charges will be filed. They replied stating, quote, law enforcement initially deemed this a civil issue. That's what I wanted to talk about. I hate that law enforcement doesn't prosecute these things as criminal matters. Now, I'm not, this is not me saying, oh, we should throw all contractors in jail when they do somebody wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But when they can show proof that someone has stolen their money, that is not a criminal matter, in my opinion. I think that if that's the case here, I think if the homeowner can show, and they can show proof that this person stole their money, then I agree. I 100% agree that they should go to jail. So, that might be harsh, but that's just the long and short of it. A subsequent review of the state was unable to uncover evidence that currently supports a criminal charge at this time. That's because there wasn't a signed contract. So there you go. She should have got a contract signed before giving him the money. And I think that's another lesson to be learned there, right? Let's see. I don't know that I want to read the whole bit of rest of this, but I thought that was interesting. And I thought, I just wanted to point that out, that, a lot of times law enforcement will deem it as a civil dispute. And I think that is incorrect. I don't think it should be a civil dispute. I think some of these things that they consider as civil matters should be treated, with some consequences for people that do and I'm not just talking about contractors. I just mean in general. If a neighbor, walks over into your yard and does something that law enforcement considers to be a civil matter, but they've actually done something illegal, there's got to be some consequences there, more than just you suing them, in my opinion. And so, anyway, that's our news story for tonight. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Do you agree? Should that be a criminal matter? Maybe there's more to it. Maybe I'm being too one-sided on this, and maybe this contractor has a good reason for what, they might consider their side of this. I don't know. Emery says, is Ream the company you won't work with? Ream is not the company, but I'm not going to answer that question anymore, guys. I'm not going to. I think if you've watched enough of my videos, you would know the brand that I'm talking about. And in fact, there's been a few videos where I've said their name, but anyway, maybe I shouldn't beat around the bush so much. I know it probably drives some of you nuts, but I'm really trying to get out of this game where I'm bashing people and things like that. I just think that there are times where, there's one thing to say, oh, I prefer one brand over another. And then there's another thing to say that some brands have just simply done, folks wrong. And that's just kind of how I feel. I don't know. Ryan says, I have a whole house surge protector device, SPD. Do I still need separate SPDs on my HVAC system, indoor and outdoor? Is it best practice to have multiple layers of protection, or is one enough in most cases? It's always been told to me that it's okay to have more than one. So this is not like, like there's some things out there that you're actually making things worse if you have two devices that could be, working against each other. Sometimes technology is guilty of that, right? If you have a smart heating and air system and you try to put it with a smart thermostat, it's not good. It's not double smart now. They actually work against each other. And so, as it's been explained to me, by other electricians and of course heating and air guys in our trade, you can't have too many, but one is enough. So if you have, whole house surge protection on your home, then I've been told that it's not necessarily required. And I've actually had a manufacturer's rep tell me that, when they were wanting surge protection, for their heating and air system after a warranty claim. And they said they were fine with, cause the homeowner came back and said, well, I'm going to just go ahead and do it for the entire house, Ryan also says, my AC doesn't have a separate disconnect and is powered directly from the main panel outside. Any pros and cons to not having a separate disconnect, or does it even matter? I don't think it matters. I think that as long as as far as the code here is in Virginia, and I know every state's different, but for the most part, what they want to see is some form of disconnect, way of killing the power to that unit within sight of the unit, or within a certain amount of feet of that unit. And so if you've got the panel there, I've seen that before as well. So I don't think it's bad to not set a disconnect right there beside it as well. That would be a little overkill, right? I do not think we finally got someone's name here that how do we pronounce that? Anconius. There we go. Do you support HVAC Awareness Day? HVAC Awareness Day, which is June 22nd. National HVAC Tech Day, celebrated June 22nd every year. I guess I didn't even know this was a thing, and I'm actually a heating and air guy. I feel like they have a national something for every single day of the year. Today, I remember one time it was National Hot Dog Day, and our local gas station was selling hot dogs at a discount because it was National Hot Dog Day. But at least I think that's what I Googled HVAC Awareness Day, and the first thing that popped up was National HVAC Tech Day, which was on June 22nd. So I assume that's what you're talking about. Ryan says, I agree. Companies should be held accountable if they mislead someone. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even saying that. I'm not even talking about misleading someone. I'm talking about if you just downright did something illegal, like stole their money. That's where I think there should be some more than just a civil matter at that point, right? Ryan also says, I agree. No need to be negative about companies. Maybe one day they'll make products you like and sponsor your channel. Who really knows? Maybe they get bought by another company you like also. That's a good point. That's finding the silver lining, right? In fact, it's funny you said that, Ryan. One of their people, I don't know who he is. I don't know what his title is or how he ranks in the company, but someone did comment on that. And I remember him saying, I'm the director of this or the manager of that. And he said, we'd like to make this right, or I can't remember exactly what he said, but he commented on one of my videos, and I commented back to him, hey, shoot me an email. Maybe we can figure something out. Maybe just maybe I'm wrong in all this and whatever. Unfortunately, the people that, for those of you that don't know, I told a story about a company that would not honor a warranty, and it made me really upset. And I said I will never sell their products again to this day. And I ended up buying the customer a compressor to make it right. I bought it myself. And so anyway, back to the topic. I think that just ultimately, anyway, I told this guy to shoot me an email. I can't remember exactly where I was going with that, but anyway, live show and I lose my train of thought. There you go. I'm human. I'm more than human. I'm chubby and I lose my train of thought often, right? Gary says my split system in currently in heat mode equals 72 degrees in house. Just taking the chill out of the home. Will be in the 50s overnight. Man, you got where are you at? That's right. You're up north somewhere. You're already getting some chilly nights. I tell you, I have always, since I was a child, always loved the summer. I hated the winter. I hate snow. I hate cold. I hate being cold. But as I've gotten older, I don't know. I think something's changed in me. Let me adjust this camera just a smidge here, guys. Maybe so y'all can see my fat face a little bit better. I will say I've always liked the fall because I like football, right? But I'm enjoying the fall even more. I think partly because my daughter's 2 now, and she's getting excited about some of the festivities and Halloween and all the other things. And, it's just made me I'm enjoying the fall as it's getting closer and closer more than ever. And I think I might be switching. I think my favorite season of the year might just be the fall. I also think that if you're a heating and air guy, it's hard to be in love with the summer, right? Especially when you're just working your butt off every summer constantly. And Conius, I hope I'm saying that right now. Okay, I have a real question. What are the most common DIY things you can do to maintain a home HVAC system that people don't do? I think the obvious one, right? We all know what the first one's going to be. I think some of you could probably guess it before I even said it. But the first one is obviously changing that air filter as often as it should be. I think I don't know what the statistic would be, but I would bet that the majority, if not 75% of people that own a home today do not change their air filter as often as they should, right? Another one would be, if you do have batteries in your thermostat, that's another one. I think that another one that I think is sometimes overlooked, because you guys know that, at least most of you that join us every week, that I'm not the DIY guy. I'm not the guy that's going to show you how to repair your air conditioner. I think that there's some liability there, and I also would feel really bad if I showed you something and then you went and got hurt trying to do that, right? So I'm not the DIY guy, but one thing I think homeowners could do themselves, and they don't do it enough themselves, and that is if you have a mini split with a drain, not clearing that enough yourself. I think that just throwing a shop vac on the end of that drain at the beginning and maybe the middle of every summer, you would do yourself a lot of favors, So hopefully that answers your question. I don't want to get into all the ins and outs. I think that there's something to be said for some homeowners are more handy than others. Some of them probably could handle cleaning coils and things like that. But maybe that's my little tidbit of the night. Throwing a shop vac on the end of that mini split drain is just not done enough by anyone, by not the pros, by not the homeowner, so that's one that I would definitely throw in there. Emery says, when an AC starts up, why does the compressor come on after the fan? It's just probably the design of your system, Emery. Not all of them do that. Some of them start at the same time. And so that just might be the design of your particular system. They're already trying to get air across that coil as that compressor starting up, possibly. Ryan says, why is it important to having a level platform on your HVAC equipment to be installed on? I understand indoor leveling for balance and noise, but what about outdoor leveling? I think the main thing, Ryan, is first of all, that's what they're designed for, right? If they're designed to be level and refrigerant and things are going through there, the fan itself, that sort of stuff. But the main reason is, and I think most, pros would probably throw out there, and that is the oil getting back to the compressor. So if something's out of whack, something's unlevel, you could be basically creating a P-trap in that unit, depending on how things are piped, for the oil of that refrigerant. The oil in those refrigerant lines. And, and then again, like, as I said, the fan itself, sometimes when units are unbalanced, you're just kind of playing with things. Imagine a ceiling fan that's meant to be surface mounted on a level ceiling, and then you just turn that, if it's just hanging sideways or something, and just the kind of, I can see after some time, maybe, your fan blades aren't as balanced like they should, and, things like that. But that's the main reasons, I would say. There's other reasons too, I'm sure, but that's the main reasons. John says, how do you feel about Trane AC versus Rheem? Which is better and why? John, I think Trane is probably known to be a more premium brand. They've got the spine fin coil and their polycarbonate cabinet, air handlers, and some other things. Rheem's claim to fame is, they're going to be maybe a little more budget friendly, and they're also, they're pretty reliable as well. But I think between those two, most would say that Trane's known to be more of a premium brand. What I would say between those two particular brands, though, because you're not really naming one that I dislike for one reason or another. I don't hate either one of those brands. And so I would recommend to you, find a good contractor and go with the brand that they recommend. And, if it's the same contractor offering both of those brands, then I would maybe even consider looking for another contractor. I've never been a fan of contractors that say, "Oh, I'll sell you whatever you want." I would rather work with a contractor that says, I like this brand for this reason, and I don't care what the brand is, but they have a brand that they know and love, and they will stand behind, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid, and they know who to call if something's wrong. that's kind of that's who I would want to do business with, especially if I'm spending a gob of money. Tech Junkie says, change the filter. Ryan says, what are your thoughts on products like press fittings, push connect, yoga pipe, quick connects, and other DIY friendly techniques in HVAC that even pros sometimes use? Do you only braze or solder? So currently we do only braze, unless we're talking about mini splits that we flare the ends. I don't work in hospitals or other places that they require. We actually do have one customer that's a vet office, but we braze there too. But if you're somewhere that you have to do pro press or one of these other techniques, I think part of it for me is, I'm not saying they're bad. One of the reasons is for me is the fittings are expensive, right? And I know some people will say, well, yeah, but look at the time you save. I mean, I've got some really good guys I've got one guy that could probably braze it almost as fast as you could, doing everything you're supposed to do, cleaning the pipe, removing the burrs and all that stuff. And, I don't know. I think if they were the same price, if you could buy the fittings for a fraction of what you could buy them now and you could buy the tool at a decent price, I'd have no problem. I would probably switch it, And maybe as time goes on, maybe they'll become a little more budget friendly. Maybe another brand needs to come out and kind of play a little bit of that, free market against them and get some of those prices down a little bit. I don't know. What's the most hourly pay you have heard? 40 per hour, 50 per hour. What site would tell me the most I can make in this area in Savannah, Georgia? I've heard of guys making that kind of money, John. But they're usually up north. They're usually probably working on some sort of government project. They're usually probably union. And they're usually probably going to be in a very high cost of living area, like New York City, for example, maybe. But I can tell you this, here in Virginia, I don't know anyone that makes that kind of money. Just fixing air conditioners, unless they're, some sort of, in commercial. Let's see, Tech Junkie is saying otherwise. I don't know. What do I know? I don't make that kind of money. So, I don't know. That's a good question. Emery says, can putting thermostats in direct sunlight affect the system? It's not going to affect the system, but it will affect the operation of the thermostat, so if it's in direct sunlight, that is affecting the thermostat temperature reading, what it thinks the ambient temperature is. So, man, you guys are rolling in some questions tonight. I think it was either last week or the week before. It was kind of quiet. But we are going to break away for just a moment to a segment that we like to break away every now and then and do a segment on different things. And tonight's breakaway segment, or at least for our first one, is going to be one of my favorite ones, and it's called Josh's Goofy Inventions. So tonight's goofy invention is, we've talked about all kinds of crazy things. I think last week was the robot that follows you around and constantly blows cool air on you. So you could save all kinds of money on not heating and cooling your entire home and just have a robot that follows you around blowing warm or cool air on you. And so tonight's goofy invention, Josh goofy invention, is I don't know, this is a goofy one. And that is having registers in your home. So whether it's floor or ceiling mount registers that are scented themselves, that they would have some sort of oil diffuser in them, right? You guys have probably seen those oil diffusing type systems in your home where they can, put out some scent of some type. And so my goofy invention tonight is having floor registers that have the scented and you know, feel free to steal my idea and patent this. It's okay. You can steal my idea. But having floor registers, actually, let's see, is this an idea? Let's see, 851. Floor, maybe I'm over here thinking that this is a, you know, I'm coming up with a goofy invention with oil diffuser. Let's see if there's anything on here. A floor diffuser. What, Amazon's got something called a floor diffuser. That must be that thing right there. But I was thinking, like, you know, something like these floor registers where the diffuser would be built into it somehow. Oh, what is this right here? Oh, no, that's a motorized one. I was going to say, I saw that little thing hanging down from the floor register, and I was like, oh my gosh, somebody did invent it. Some of these goofy inventions, it's just me throwing, you know, stuff down late at night. You know, I'm just kind of like, oh, this, for our next live show, I'll throw this goofy invention out there. But I don't see one. So if you want to steal my idea and patent it, you have my permission. You know, who knows? Somebody attached arms to a blanket a few years ago and became a multimillionaire. So maybe you can too, you know? And you just remember me when you go big time. How cool would that be, right? If you stole my goofy idea and went and patented it and then sold millions of them, you know, maybe you'll come back and bless me. I don't know. That, how crazy would that be though? You know, floor registers that have a little scented something already built into them. You know, maybe a little hole in the register, like a little hole, and you just dump your oil in there once a month or something. I don't know. That would be crazy though. That would be so crazy. TJ's LB Fit 98. I'm just going to call you TJ, pal. TJ, my AC is not cooling enough. The temperature difference between the supply and return vents is 17 degrees, and at night the AC never gets the temp down to 70 degrees with 85 degree outside, more below. I'm thinking to slow down the blower fan a little. What are your thoughts? Note all of the return vents are open and the supply vent is not impeded in any way and the filter is clean. Note 2, this is a long question. This is one of those long ones. My AC guy changed out the condenser 3 weeks ago, putting in a used 2018 Bream condenser, and some nights the AC brought the temperature down to 68 degrees. My system is a Rheem 4-ton, 48 BTU, about 2,300 square foot home. I'm a very handy DIY homeowner, not a pro, so forgive me and providing too much information or not enough. Ty. So maybe you go by Ty. We're going to call you Ty now. Hopefully I can remember that when your name pops up. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep calling you TJ. But Ty, I think a couple things. The first thing I think is you need to find somebody that knows what they're doing and can tell you exactly what is wrong with the system. So the question becomes, why are you only getting a 17-degree split? You know, why is your delta T so low? And, you know, that's not like super low compared to some problems, right? Some systems we come across, you know, their delta T is significantly lower than that. But to answer your question, slowing down the airflow may actually, you know, it may, you know, allow the air going across the coil a little more time to cool down, you know, and you may get a better split. But I think that something else is probably going on there. You know, it sounds to me, because all you're going to be doing when you slow the air down is you're just affecting the sensible capability. They call it sensible heat load or sensible and cooling function, and you're just slowing down that air and you're affecting that. So the thought process is, if I went to someone's home, if they were having an airflow issue, or a humidity issue rather, then I'm going to look at lowering the airflow so I can affect the latent capability of that system. But with your case, you're trying to affect the sensible, and so slowing down the airflow may allow that air to cool down a little bit more, and you might get a better split, but it's not going to affect the cooling capability of that system, meaning it's not going to drop the temperature in there that much more. It may a little bit, but I think you've got something else going on, and you need to maybe have someone take a peek at that system and see what the heck is going on, and tell you definitively, instead of just putting in a used system, tell you definitively why you're having an issue. What's going on, you know? Kim, welcome to the show. Hello, what would you figure a price would be to move the HVAC and water heater just a few feet from where they are now? I have no idea, Kim. That is very vague. It would be very hard to answer that question. Very hard. You know, I mean, are we talking about a water heater? Maybe not so hard. You know, it's just a matter of moving it a few feet and then running the water lines and electric over to the new location. But heating and air, there's significantly more to it than that, you know, especially if you're looking at ductwork and so on. So some jobs, it may be a few $100, especially if you can trap the refrigerant in the outdoor unit. And then some jobs, I mean, you could be looking at thousands. You know, it just depends. You know, ductwork, if you're having to refabricate and do all kinds of things, and also not knowing where you're located, you know, you might live in an area where, you know, prices are just higher, you know, so it's really hard to answer that question. And I'm sorry that I can't. I do want to go ahead and we started our show. I had talked about a video that I had done, and multiple comments I've gotten on that video. And I said to someone in that video, I'm going to talk about that in our live show tonight. And what's scary is that video. So first, let me tell you what the video is about. The video is where I talk about the biggest mistake that homeowners make when they're running a mini split or a ductless mini split system. Is they will adjust the fan, especially when that system is oversized for the area that it's in. They will not leave the fan on auto. They will adjust that. And I've had pros, people say, oh, I've been doing heat and air for 25 years, and you're wrong. So I've had pros comment on that video and say that I'm wrong, and I'm not wrong. That's the thing. And so I told that person I'm going to talk about that in my live show tonight, and we're going to talk about it right now. So here's the deal, and I could do probably an hour-long show talking about all the ins and outs of this, but it's very simple. It's very simple. Imagine this system. Let's say you've put now a 6,000 or a 9,000 BTU unit in a bedroom that really, to heat and cool that bedroom, would only need a fraction of that, right? So it's a small bedroom, and you've got this mini split in there for all intents and purposes that it's oversized for that space, okay? When you turn the fan mode from auto to high or medium or whatever, because some people will turn it to high and try to cool that space really fast, and, you know, push all this air out the system. And what happens is you are hurting the humidity capabilities of that system. And I get these comments. People will be like, well, the outdoor unit can still turn on and off, and it can ramp up and down. So that's not true. Yes, it is true. You are hurting and I'll tell you why in just a second. You are hurting the capability of that system to remove humidity. And that's why when you see mini splits in these tiny little bedrooms or in these tiny little dens or whatever, and they have, it's clammy in there, they have humidity issues, they have a closet start to get mold growing in the corner, the walls are sweating, I had a customer one time, the bedspread kind of felt a little wet. And the reason is the system is not removing enough humidity from the space. And that's what the whole video was about. I said in the video, that's the biggest mistake ductless owners, homeowners that own a ductless system, that's the biggest mistake they make. They think that it's like their car and they turn it on full blast and they don't leave it on auto. Okay. Now, let me tell you why I'm not wrong on this. And it really boils down to, again, I could get crazy. I could go into, like we were just talking about, sensible and latent and all these different terms, and we could talk about all that. But here's the gist of it. Carrier guys should appreciate this. Anyone that loves Carrier. Carrier has these systems that they say remove humidity better than other systems, right? That they've got these systems. They even had a thermostat years ago that they called it a humidistat. And all it really did was it would slow down the fan, the speed of the air going across the evaporator coil, so it would get more sweaty and wet and remove more humidity from the space, right? You're making the coil cooler and you're removing more humidity. So you're slowing down the air and making the coil cooler to remove more humidity from that space. Well, think about that. So if we to increase the latent capability of that system to remove more humidity from the space, to lower the airflow across that coil and have a colder coil, and that's how you remove more humidity, what would possess you to think that changing the fan speed higher on a mini split would not hurt the humidity, the latent capability of that system? So anyway, that's the long and short of it. I could probably do an hour-long show. Hopefully the person that commented and I told them I would talk about that in my live show tonight, hopefully they see this. But it's just crazy because I have pros that comment on that. I'll stop saying that now, but I'll just say it one last time, and that is I have pros that'll comment on that video and say you're wrong. I'm not wrong. You're very misinformed. I'm trying to help a homeowner and tell them this is a mistake you're making, and you're coming on there and saying I've got all these years of experience. Well, you need to get a few more because you're wrong. Okay, when you adjust the fan speed on your remote of a mini split, instead of leaving it in auto, you are hurting the latent capability of that system to remove humidity. It's pretty simple. Okay, so I'll get off of that. I've already lost some of our viewers. People are getting tired of hearing me yell into this microphone. But it's very annoying when, these guys get on here and they're like, you're wrong. I'm not wrong. You just sound dumb trying to comment on my video right now. So I know that's very arrogant sounding, so I'll stop now. All right, Emery, what is the biggest HVAC scam you see? What's the biggest one? I think probably the most common one we see on the regular is heating and air guys trying to sell things that maybe the homeowner doesn't need, right? That's a pretty common one, especially if they get paid by a commission. I would always, if you can, if someone's told you something that, hey, they want to get you to invest money in, and it's going to be quite an investment, get a second opinion if you can. You can't always, but if you can. And so I would say that's probably the most common scam that we see. And I don't even know if scam's the right word, but it does feel a little scammy, right? If they're trying to sell you something you don't really need, feels a little scammy. Press fittings are not going to get less. That's true. I can dream, Brian. I can dream. Arch says my mom's split system is leaving to one side, maybe due to gophers. Those gophers. Claudine, welcome to the show. What company makes the best IAQ products? I don't know. I don't know that I've really sat down and compared, every single one out there. I have some favorites over others. I'm not going to mention any names, but I don't buy into some of these systems that are kind of glitzy and they're overpriced when they sell them. I'll say this. So at Griffin Air, and I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, so I'm just going to be honest. At Griffin Air, we sell April Air is the media filters that we sell a lot of. We sell a lot of these UV lights that are made by Blue Tube. And they come with a 2-year warranty on the bulb, and some of them last a lot longer than that. And then the last thing we sell other things too, but the last thing we sell probably the most of, or a lot of, is we sell the I-wave ionizers from time to time. And I like those because of the aspect of, less maintenance or no maintenance is the thought process, right? Art says, aren't train units more labor intensive to fix? I mean, I think that's probably what a train guy probably would say, so that way they could charge more, but I don't see where they're that much more labor intensive versus another system in general. I mean, maybe in some small instances they are, maybe a little more labor to do one thing or another, but I don't think that they're that much more to be in my experience anyway. Annie says, what is a mini split? A mini split's just another word for like a ductless wall hung. Well, there's different mounts too. There's wall mounts, there's floor mounts, there are ducted mini splits now, and they're essentially small split systems, unlike, the old school normal size split system, right? Where you have a furnace or an air handler inside. They're called mini splits. They're mini. Brian says, I dislike the cover sense. Come on, Brian. Man, you need to get on board with some of my goofy inventions. We need to get rich off of them. Harry says, dryer sheets in the registers. Hey, that's actually maybe not a bad idea. What do I know? I wouldn't want to be putting a bunch of VOCs floating in the air, right? But if it's safe for that, if they're safe to breathe or whatever, and it helps, there you go. Ryan says, here's a video idea for later. I would like to see a follow-up video you did on the HVAC brands once they release their A2L systems, review all of their new product offerings. That's a good idea. In fact, I know of a few products that should be coming out, and not just one particular brand. I know a couple different brands that are waiting for the switch before they come out with a few things. So it's a good idea. John says, how do you feel about ammonia systems? Can and should I try to get into ammonia? I'm not sure how difficult it would be to get into, but I've always heard that's the way to go. I mean, it's what you're essentially asking me is, how do I feel about the industrial side of doing heating and air? And I've just never done it. Every company I've ever worked at did residential and commercial. I've never worked at a company that did that stuff. However, years ago, when I got out of trade school, little trivia fact for some of you guys may or may not know this, I originally went to school to be an electrician. And so I went to school to be an electrician. The school I went to didn't even have an HVAC class. And so the first 4 and a half years of my career, of my adult life, working in, a real job was for a company that would do electric work in factories and other industrial places. So I was probably back then around some of these ammonia systems and didn't even know it, which is kind of crazy. Gary says, too funny. My home cooking sense my home a lot. Yeah, same. Nicholas, welcome to the show. When you quote a job, do you add labor hours and also extra for an additional charges? Do you guys usually charge more than per hour? So it just depends on the job. Some jobs we will just spell it out as far as the hours go, and some jobs we do a flat rate price up front that's all encompassing. It includes the labor, but it includes all the costs of doing business as well, right? John says, do you have NATE certifications? How hard is it to get, and is it worth it? For me, no company I've ever worked at said to me, you're going to make more money if you are NATE certified. And so because of that, even when I started Griffin Air, it's not something that would cause me to make more money. I can't say to, and there might be some NATE certified guys that would disagree with me, but I don't think I could say guy. So it's, hey, this counts towards your NATE. Just turn in your number or whatever, your badge number or whatever it is that they do. But I've just never kept up with it. So, and how hard is it to get? I don't think it's hard at all. I think if you just sign up for it and take some classes, it's not hard. And then lastly, is it worth it? I think that the answer to that would just kind of maybe depend on where you're at. I mean, I think it would boil down. It would certainly dress up your resume. Those classes, you would probably learn a whole bunch. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just not something I've ever done. Ryan says, we had a vacuum back in the day that cleaned the air when running in a certain mode and had sense. Total scam. Didn't help the air quality at all. I can't imagine why it didn't help the air quality. All those scents and VOCs floating through the air, breathing, stuff like that, especially like back in the 50s and 60s, they were probably breathing stuff and doing all kinds of stuff that was, they were actually creating more problems than they thought, than they realized. But, back then they didn't have quite as tight of homes either. So they didn't have to worry about VOCs from that aspect. Annie says, how do you remove debris from the outside unit? How do you, well, I guess it depends on what the debris is. I mean, would just shut the unit off and physically remove it. If you're asking how I clean the coil, I just clean it with coil cleaner and again, shut off the system. I think Ty means thank you. Oh. I'm such a goofball. You're probably right, Ron. Oh my gosh. See, that's the thing about doing a live show. That's the kind of stuff that when I do my regular videos, the girl that helps me edit my videos, she can usually be, she'll be like, I don't think that's what that means. She'll save me. But when I'm doing my live show, you guys get to see how the hot dogs are made and all the goofy things I say. So that, if that's true, Ryan, that is hilarious. Oh my gosh. I think you're totally right though. Yeah, he was just saying at the end, thank you. Oh, I'm such an old man. Arch says, a salesman at Costco tried to talk me into, I'm still tickled from that. Oh, that's hilarious. A salesman at Costco tried to talk me into buying a Lennox heat pump. I mentioned the negative comments I've read regarding reliability, and he said it came with a 10-year parts and labor warranty. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that, Arch. I mean, I've got friends that won't install anything else. They love Linux. They're drinking the Kool-Aid for it, So I actually, it really shows you why there's so many different brands. It shows you why there's so many different brands of cars, right? I mean, when I was growing up, I only knew like 3 different ones. It was like, I grew up in a family where my dad and my grandfather liked Fords. And then I remember other people in our family and friends that, their family were Chevrolet. And then of course there were some Dodge people, but anyway, the moral of the story is there's probably 100 different car brands out there, or at least 50. And, it just goes to show you everybody has their own preferences, Annie says, what's going on when the AC comes on, it blows out heat before getting cold? It's probably just taking a minute for that outdoor unit to run and get the refrigerant, balanced and get the heat removal process started, Kim says, so it is in the basement and I want to move it across from where it is on the other side of a beam to put up a wall and make it a storage room. I live in Nebraska. Well, that's one thing going for you, Kim. I would think that in Nebraska, they probably don't take advantage of people. I feel like us folks over here on the East Coast, Nebraska has a pretty good reputation. And, maybe, get a couple quotes and hopefully, somebody treats you fair. Hugo says, do I need new ductwork when putting in a new system? Not usually, but there's a possibility. Sometimes, yes, sometimes. Adrian, what up? Adrian has a show that he runs that you guys, if you want to check it out, it's usually a little more techie. He's a commercial heating and air guy, and he does a live show. It starts right as ours is ending sometimes. So, and there's usually other pros on there, and people way smarter than me. They work on those ammonia systems that you guys were talking about. Harry says the only way to remove humidity is by the volume of the air going across the coils, right? All of the air in the room has to go through the coils to properly work, is the way I understand it. Well, not all of the air, I guess, maybe not every molecule of the air, but obviously it needs to go across that coil to remove the humidity to make that air drier. So if it goes through there and I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know everything, but as I understand it, if the, you know, as it goes across that coil and it gets cooler, the dew point or the lower temperature of the air, it makes it to where it can't hold as much water. And I don't know, I've sat through classes and there's other guys out there that know way more about that stuff than I do. But I think ultimately, you know, yes, it has to go across the coil to make the air drier. Right. And that, you know, by default, as that evaporator coil sweats and starts to condensate and remove the water from the air, that's what makes that system, you know, remove humidity. Arch says, so leaving the mini split on auto will solve the humidity issue. All these mini splits are very similar and are made in PRC. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to fix 100% if you have a humidity problem. What I'm saying is when you take the ability, when you turn that system to, you know, high or medium or whatever you turn the system to, you are removing the capability of that system to ramp down and remove humidity. And that's the gist of what I talk about in that video. Now, I don't get super technical in that video. I don't talk about, you know, latent capabilities and all that stuff, because I didn't realize people were going to argue with me. I was just trying to help homeowners out and say, if you got a mini split, leave it in auto. Just set the temperature. If you need to set the temperature a degree lower because you're hot, fine, but leave it in auto, because you are having humidity issues and you're making it worse when you do that. And so I think that if it's a true inverter system, which I think most mini splits are, then that's the way you do it. You leave it in auto. Ryan says, any snake oil products that you know about in HVAC, anything customers should avoid when buying a new system or upgrades? That's a great question. Ooh, I'd have to think about that, Ryan. I mean, I think that I think that there are times when I think that guys are pushing snake oil when they try to walk into a home and they say, oh, well, the brand I'm selling is best. And, you know, or I don't know. I think that some of that stuff feels a little snake oil-ish, but that's a good question. I'd have to think about that. Nothing's like springing to mind right this very second. Like I can't think of like a product where I see other guys selling them and I'm like, that's snake oil. Do not buy that. You know, I can't think of anything necessarily that like right this second in that ballpark, but it's a good question. John says, what is the best entry-level position I can get into? I'm a 608 EPA Universal certified, but I haven't done it in so long. I'm a little scared to try again. I only did AC work in the Army. John, I mean, that's a good question, pal. I think that I would just say, you know, wherever you do apply, just be honest with them. You know, as a business owner, I can tell you I've hired guys and they say in the interview what they think I want to hear. And I would rather somebody just be honest. And I think if I were interviewing a guy and he said to me, hey, I used to be in the Army, I used to do AC, I feel like I still have a lot to learn, but I am EPA certified, and, you know, and I'll be the hardest working guy you got, or I'll be the first guy here every morning and the last guy to leave, or whatever it is that you are willing to do a good job. I can tell you that that's not what I hear in a lot of interviews, right? And so I feel like a lot of guys will get in an interview and just kind of lie, and they'll say, oh yeah, I know how to do this and that, and I deserve X amount of dollars an hour. That's something I've been dealing with over the last couple years. And unfortunately, once you get them in there, it's like, well, now that I know that they don't know what they said, I can't really demote them, right? And then you're like, well, do I fire them? And I mean, I don't know. It's just like it's a pickle, right? And you know, so that's the only thing I would say, John. And hopefully, I would hunt around enough that, you know, if you want to do heating and air, hunt around enough and find a good company, right? You know, and I think you will. I don't know where you're located, but if you try to find a really good company, you'll find one, right? Gary says, I agree with you, Joshua, on humidity. The Mitsubishi here in the dry mode will dial the fan speed down to a whisper, doesn't overcool the room. Exactly. Thank you, Gary. Finally, somebody agreeing with me. Doozy John. So we've got John and Doozy John. Man, got all these Johns tonight. I use Ecobee thermostat and like to download the system running data to do my analysis. I wonder if you can DOA video about the Daikin thermostat that comes with their heat pump. So Doozy John, that is one thing that Daikin is working on. I talked to them when I did my factory tour about some of their capabilities that they're working on. And I don't want to say, because there are certain things that they told me that I'm not supposed to say. So I need to be careful, but I will say that I think I could say this. They are working on ways that if you get the Daikin 1 and you sign up for their OneCloud, that they're going to send you reports. I think I'm allowed to say that for sure. And so I don't know how that would compare to Ecobee and what they're sending out, but I don't want to say something I'm not allowed to say. So anyway, but yeah, good. That's a good comment. Good point. And maybe that's something we can dive into later and do a video where we show folks kind of what you're saying, show folks what some of the data is that some of these thermostats can give to you. What are some certifications I can pursue? I need some refreshing courses. John, I mean, if you want me to be honest with you, I think that most of the guys that I have trained and learned from when I was coming up through the trade, I learned more hands-on than I did in the classroom. Now, I'm not saying I learned a ton in the classroom. There's certainly value there, but I would say that I've learned way more from mentors and people that are doing it. And I remember one thing I used to do is I worked with a guy that was really, really smart. His name was Wayne. And I would ask Wayne questions that I thought I already knew the answers to just to hear his thoughts on it. Just to hear how he would approach that, sort of thing. So Ryan says, Nate and HVAC, excellent certifications. Emery says, how do you become a Nate certified technician? It's not hard. I think you just apply for it, or I don't really know. I've never done it. But I'm sure Nate has a website that you could go to, and I can't remember. Is Nate done through ACA? Nate certification. natex.org. Let me show you guys what I'm seeing. So yeah, that's whenever you see that emblem right there, that's the Nate stuff guys are talking about. And they've got 5,300 contractors, 34,000 technicians, 5,000 testing organizations. So certifying the finest in HVAC-R. Yeah, so it doesn't say, I guess Nate is Nate. I was going to say, it doesn't say who actually does Nate, but it looks like if you go to their website here, you could probably get some more info and get you started on that path, Emery. TJ says, thanks for the feedback, Josh. May God continue to richly bless you. Thanks, pal. That was really nice. N Ram. I'm just going to call you Ram, that's a pretty cool name. I used to have a Dodge Ram. 2500 Cummins. I miss it. The thermostat showing 80 when set to 77. The usual 6 things listed on every website doesn't. 77. Ram, I don't know if you're saying that it's incorrect, and if you're saying that it's actually 77 in the room and the thermostat's reading 80, on some thermostats you can adjust that. You go into the settings and tell the thermostat, hey, you are reading incorrectly. You need to be 3 degrees lower, and it will adjust as such. John says, I appreciate you so much. Thanks, John. Thanks for your time and knowledge. I love the trade. How do you deal with crawl spaces, snakes, black widows, and stuff you run into? Do you deal with many crawl spaces? In Virginia, we do deal with a lot of crawl spaces. And as far as snakes, I am lucky to say that I have never seen a snake in a crawl space. Now, I've seen a bunch of other critters. I ran into a rat, and I mean a rat, a big old, he looked almost as big as a possum in a crawl space in Richmond one time, but I've never run into a snake. And I've always joked and said that they might have been there and I just didn't see them, right? But I have employees that have run. I have one employee in particular that ran into a snake one time. But you know, it's just part of the job. If somebody has a super infested home or crawl space, we have said to them, you've got to get this taken care of before we can safely work in your home. I know there are some guys that are tough guys, and they're way tougher than I am on that front, but you know, that's, especially if it's a safety issue, that's just not something that we do. You know, we tell them you need to get that issue taken care of. Linux is a difficult company, Brian says. Arch says plus 15% Costco card. I told him thanks, but no thanks. I'm just going through some of your comments here, seeing if there's any questions. John, you are the man. Thanks, pal. It's all I need to get John in here just to make me feel good about myself, right? It's always about removing the heat from one place and moving it to the other. I hate when people say my AC is not blowing cold air. John, you might not like me then, because I'm the guy that usually will say stuff if I have a guy that I used to work for. He hated when people would say hot water heaters. So guess what I started calling them? Hot water heaters. I never called them water heaters, you know, because it would just annoy him. So anyway, but no, I hear you. I'm one of those guys that'll never call it Freon. I call it refrigerant. It doesn't bother me if somebody calls it Freon. It's just not what it's called, right? Amana S Series Systems sends you reports. Yeah, that's the same. I mean, it's the same as, I'm sure it's through the OneCloud. Ty here again. What is a heat pump and where is it in my AC? Which has the ability to heat up the house. So all a heat pump is it's an air conditioning unit, the outdoor unit that can run backwards in the wintertime. That's all it is. It has a reversing valve, and it'll shift depending on if it's in AC mode or heat mode. And so, you know, the coil inside, when it's in heat mode, will, you know, obviously get warm, and the outdoor coil gets cool. And that's why it's got a, you know, if it starts to freeze up, it goes into defrost mode. And then, and you know, obviously if it switches and goes back in AC mode, that's when your coil inside gets cold and your outdoor coil gets warm. So that's essentially, in a long and short of it, that's what a heat pump is. Did I finally get to the last question? I've been trying to roll through them quick, so that's great. HVAC double agent team. Ooh, playing both sides. It's like a spy in here. Thanks, Josh, for all your awesome content. Congrats again on 40 under 40. Would you agree? Thanks for your kind words, by the way. Would you agree UV lights and air purifiers could be snake oil if the ductwork is not sealed properly or incredibly dirty? Yeah, I mean, I think that. So, ductwork that's not sealed properly is an efficiency issue, but it's, I don't know, I'm about to say some very controversial stuff. To me, it's not the end of the world, especially if that ductwork runs through a space that, you know, so for example, I have a customer that has a conditioned crawl space, and it's this way, or maybe they did it to get away from, you know, maybe the unit was sweating. I don't really know why they did all the things they did, but it's not an encapsulated crawl space. It doesn't have the plastic. It's just like a sealed brick foundation and then a slab of concrete, and then all their ductwork and everything, you know, and below their house runs through there. And they put registers down there. They treated it like a room in the house. And I think there's some good reasons I think that's great for a lot of reasons. But the main thing is, when I see stuff like that, I don't care if the ductwork is sealed or not sealed, right? It's going through a conditioned space anyway. And I kind of feel that way about crawl spaces, right? Oh, I know that's controversial, but I feel that way about crawl spaces that are not necessarily encapsulated or enclosed. It's an efficiency issue, but I think that, I don't know, I understand all the things that guys talk about, and that's why they do duct blast tests and all these different things. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have a space that, you know, that you may want to blow some cool air down there anyway, what's the Maybe that's why I like ductless stuff more. Because you don't have to worry about duct loss at that point. But anyway, Gary says, good night. Yeah, it is getting kind of late. We're running a little late tonight. I am going to be wrapping up just in a moment. But I will say, as we wrap up, as with every show, if you have a heating and air company in your area that does good work, has done well by you, even if you've shared them before, please share their name and where they're located, so that way we can give those guys a little bit of love as we close out our show. Any good heating and air companies out there, maybe that company may see your shout out, but we we may also, sorry, I'm reading some of the comments as I'm trying to talk. We may also be able to, if you have another person in your area, they may be, they might see that and you can actually show that company some love in that you're going to send them some business too. Emery says, if you can see a gold valve inside, it's a heat pump. Yeah, reversing valves, they've got the, the 3 pipes out the bottom, the 1 pipe out the top, usually, and then it's kind of got this, it almost looks like, I don't know, like a, what would be a good, something good to compare it to? It almost looks kind of like, I was going to try to show you guys something that it kind of looks like, but anyway, it almost kind of looks like a brass pipe, and it's got a valve on there that shifts back and forth, and it usually has 2 wires going to it that goes to the coil, and yeah, that's your reversing valve. What is your opinion on the Daikin Fit versus the Medea versus the Griffin Flex air source heat pumps for cold climates? They seem to have similar performance. Andre, check out my video where I actually compare the Daikin Fit to the Griffin Flex, and I believe the Medea is also a non-communicating inverter system. I could be wrong on that, but if I'm right, I believe that communicating inverter systems, and this is, obviously I work with Daikin, I sell Daikin, and a lot of you guys know that, that I like Daikin, but it's not just for the fit alone. I think just in general, communicating inverter systems are going to be superior in a lot of different areas than these non-communicating systems. Now, does that mean they're superior in a cold climate and performance as far as heating the space? Maybe not, but they're going to far outshine them in a lot of other areas, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen. And so I check out that video if you haven't seen it. Maybe that might give you a few, a few points to consider. John says, any news on the, and John, I'm not going to say what you said, but on the Daikin Fit that they are going to be coming out soon. I don't have anything new yet, John. As soon as I do, though, obviously I'm going to be probably the first guy doing a video on it. So we are waiting patiently on that new fit to be coming out. Does natural gas burn cooler or hotter than propane? Which is more efficient? I know propane is more expensive to buy. Just wondering, do propane furnaces need more maintenance? Ryan, I don't know the answers to all these questions. I'm not going to sit here and BS you. I do know that let's see. I think LP does burn hotter. I could be wrong on that, but the reason I think that is the holes are smaller on natural gas orifices when they come out of the burner. So maybe that means natural gas burns hotter. I don't know. I just know that, the orifices have to be changed, and obviously the gas valve has to be, you have to change the springs and stuff like that if you're going to be converting it to LP. But I think all in all, the heat rise is going to be relatively the same. And you pointed it out, LP gas does cost more, at least sometimes it does. If the price ever drops, then it drops. But usually, I'd say in general, it's going to cost a little more, a lot more. And natural gas for the longest time was pushed as the efficient option. It wasn't until recently that one particular political party got away from it. They pushed it for years and years, and then now they they hate all fossil fuel burning appliances. So, I think that natural gas is probably superior in a number of ways, but if you live in the country, you don't have a lot of choices, do you? Daniel says, what's your take on coaching for business owners? I have a business coach for mine. I recommend it. In fact, I have a group, a mastermind that we are going to be starting a new group soon. I didn't expect anyone to ask about this like you did, Daniel, but we have a group where business owners will meet and go over different things each week and, throw out ideas and so on. And if you want to get more information on that, definitely check out our website and scroll to the bottom, newhvacguide.com, scroll to the bottom and click the growth groups link. Derek says, pairing different brand equipment together. Just had a Goodman furnace installed alongside a Bosch IDS 2.0. I've got an Ecobee thermostat and it's set up as 1-stage AC. Can it do 2-stage? I think just the way it's programmed, it is an inverter system, Derek, but it's programmed to, it's not going to have a Y2. At least the 2.0s I haven't dealt with a whole lot. I've dealt with the 1.0s a whole bunch, and there's no Y2. It's just the Y1, and it still operates, like they do, a non-communicating inverter system. But you've got to tell the furnace it's being paired. If you have an outdoor unit that has no Y2, you've got to tell the furnace when you're setting it up and the settings and so on. If you read the instructions, it might even say you need to do a jumper here or there or whatever the instructions say, because it's being paired with a quote unquote single stage unit, even though it's technically an inverter. John Williams says, Total Services Heating and Air in Guyton, Georgia, does good work. Try them out. So shout out to those guys. John's showing you some love. When are your live streams? We do it every Tuesday night. Now I say every, let me look at the calendar real quick, because we do have a Tuesday coming up, September 2023. We do have a Tuesday coming. Okay, so today's the 19th, so we will be here next week. So it's every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so whatever that is in your time zone, if you're not on the East Coast, which I think you're in Georgia, so you would be same as me. But some of these guys join from, way out on the West Coast, and it's probably still early evening for those guys. Which is kind of cool. And, I appreciate you guys being here. And speaking of the West Coast, Chloe says, Bosch package unit. I am in California. Do I need heat strips installed? It's hard for me to answer that question. I would defer to your local pro on that. If you're in an area that, if it doesn't get below 20 degrees outside, I don't know that you would need heat strips installed. Ryan says, what were these old furnaces that could run for 40 plus years made of? Couldn't be the same metals as today. Were the heat exchangers thicker? I think so, right? I mean, back then, everything was just cheaper. They could just, they had these systems, they were like old diesel motors, they would just pump refrigerant through there, and they didn't care about efficiency. They just would work forever, right? These days, they've got to worry about things, not just efficiency, not just performance, but some companies are considering carbon footprint at the end of the day when the system does finally die and you've got to dispose of it. Arch, Daikin Fit packed heat pump. Arch, they still haven't come out with that yet, pal. I did tell them when I went to the factory that you were recommending that. There are only 2 propane around here, and it's pretty darn expensive. Chloe says, FYI, 2 quotes for Bosch package, new ductwork, 6 supplies, replace 14 by 25 return, add another return, stainless steel curb and plumb, 15 grand. And one said yes, and the other said no. Chloe, here's the thing. If one said yes, then you can always install it and just, you can have them not wire it in for now. And if you need to do it later, it's there. Or you can just have it and just hopefully, if you set everything up correctly, it'll just never run. They'll never turn on because your heat pump is being able to keep your home warm enough. But I will say, I could tell you, I don't know if you're asking what my thought is on your price. In my area, that price would be a little high, but I can tell you I was helping somebody on our website today, newhvacguide.com, where we help homeowners through the process of buying a heating and air system. And the prices they were getting were significantly higher than the price you just received. Now, they were located where were they located? Washington. They were near Seattle. But the prices they were getting were way, 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 way higher than that. We're going to be wrapping up in just a moment, guys. Ram says, thanks for the answer to my question. Not sure if there's a setting on the Honeywell to adjust 3 degrees below. I'll see. Chloe asking about her quotes. Ryan, thanks for the show. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. 25K in Cali. Yeah, 25 is... this guy, he was 25, 30 grand on some of these. And John, thanks, pal. Thank you for the tip there. Steel, last question. This is going to be our last question. After watching a previous video you did, I purchased the MasterCare Power Boost from your website and installed it. My question is, how soon after installing it will I see a difference? I would say pretty quick. You should, if nothing else, the compressor should be running a little quieter. If it's not, then you might have, some issues or maybe it's just not gonna, the hope and dream with that stuff is it's not going to actually fix anything necessarily. It's just going to lubricate things. And the hope and dream is you would get more life out of the system. But I do appreciate your purchase there. And again, John, thank you for your tip. Charlotte, North Carolina is crazy expensive for new systems. 15K is a bargain. Yeah, that's what's crazy is I'll help people on our website and I'll help 2 people in the same day and both of them think their price is high. And sometimes folks will get a price and it's half of what everyone else's is. And I'm like, yeah, just be glad you live where you live because I'm helping other customers and their prices are outrageous. So anyway, looks like we had a pretty late show tonight, guys. Thank you for staying late, especially you guys on the East Coast. It's starting to get pretty late. And I do appreciate all your support. As always, if you've never subscribed to our channel, we would certainly appreciate that. I'm trying to get to 100,000 by the end of next year is kind of my goal. How cool would it be if we got there before then? And, I just, all in all, I appreciate you guys checking, following us ever. Sorry, I'm reading more comments. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you, Chris. Ram says we'll check the financing link. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're here every Tuesday, except for the first week of October. We will not be here. So in 2 weeks, I won't be here. But other than that, we'll be back next week, Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys for joining us and make it a great week. Take care.